All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the most stupendous, incredible, outrageous, most fulfilling podcast out there in the universe of podcasts. This is the Sons of History podcast. I really was hoping to extend the intro as long as possible, but I can go no further. This is Dustin Bass.
And this is Alan Wakim.
Why do you have to do the 20-minute pause in between the time? You know it's coming. You know I'm going to say who I am, and you follow up with who you are. And yet, every time, something is happening in the world of Alan to where there is this imminent pause. Why?
I've been watching Dr. Jordan Peterson's.
Why do you always call him Peterman as if he was a star on Seinfeld?
Dr. Jordan Peterson. I watched him, and he's so he'll ask him a question, and rather than immediately respond,
it's like
memorized. He says he thinks about it. He goes, well. It depends on how he'll answer like that.
I don't know how you're wanting to bring that question across, but you're making it seem as if I am trying to say something in particular when I'm not. It's always very reserved.
Yeah.
So reserved I'm anxious when he talks. I get so anxious when he talks. He's so at ease.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times when I'm driving, I will listen to him, or I'll listen to Ben Shapiro.
Mm-hmm. That's a guy who's he didn't take any time to answer.
No, he pretty much. I think he's heard just about every question. He's heard every rebuttal. He's heard every statement, and he's ready. He's ready to respond.
Right. Unlike you and I. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, it is obvious, the obviousness of it all. Even I asked Alan, you going to bring up the obvious? And what did you say?
On which part?
Exactly. And you're finally like, your mustache?
All right.
I do this every year.
Dude, your mustache looks kind of, shaggy type.
Weren't you just last week bragging on the movie Smokey? What is it?
Smokey and the Bandit?
Smokey and the Bandit? I mean, didn't Burt Reynolds have a killer mustache?
Yeah, but that came out in 1977.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm turning back the clock. You know who also had a great mustache?
There's a lot of things that were hairy back in 1977. Okay?
Stupid. You know who else had a great mustache?
Who?
Your favorite person, Joseph Stalin.
Joseph Stalin.
What an angel. And speaking of Joseph Stalin, you know who else had a great mustache?
Saddam
the
Hussein.
The man who will be in the spotlight in this conversation.
Yes.
Saddam
Hussein. Yeah.
That's right. Good man.
Well, depends on who you talk to.
Depends on who you ask.
Kurds didn't like him. The Shiites didn't like him. Sunnis liked him.
Every time the Shiites saw him coming, they were like, oh, Shiite. We got to get out of here.
They Shiite their pants.
They did. Oh, the jokes just keep on coming. It's good.
Yeah. Right.
It's good. It's good jokes. We mean well. All right.
We do.
Speaking of meaning well, let's go ahead and move forward with the show.
Right.
Book and movie recommendation. I'll go ahead and drop my two.
Okay, go ahead.
My book recommendation is one of the, well, to an extent, in the grand scheme of founding fathers, he is one of the lesser well-known founding fathers, John Paul Jones. However, one of his statements is one of the most famous of all the founding fathers.
I have not yet begun to read that book.
That too. And I have not yet begun to fight. John Paul Jones, this is a good book written by Evan Thomas. Yeah, it's a pretty good rundown of his life and his actions on the sea. Yeah, and it's definitely a guy that you should know about, who was one of the founding fathers. What a brave person, just an adventurer. And this book is a bit of an adventure tale, even though it's a biography. So it is an adventure tale, and he
Hmm.
was a really cool person, very cavalier, much like myself and my mustache.
Hmm.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I loved his work on Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
He
he
was
was
one of the he played the
very good.
bass,
Yeah.
mean bass.
Yeah, and I think you used that joke on. Remember when we did the American Revolution stuff?
Well, it
And
was funny then, and it's still
so
funny
that
today.
joke is
Uh-huh.
played. That's played, Jerry. That's played.
Like my Led
Oh,
Zeppelin
okay.
4 tapes. My Led Zeppelin 4 tape, cassette tape was overused. I think one of my cars ate up that tape. That
I'm
was
gonna
a
go ahead
sad
and
day.
I'm gonna point out the obvious that I think everybody has already is probably already acknowledging is that you have brought your A game when it comes to jokes tonight.
Well, who was that guy? That guy from Good Morning Vietnam, when he's like deep
Robin
down.
Williams.
No. The guy who didn't like him, Kirby or something. He's dead now, but he was kind of like the asshole in the movie. Well, actually, there were a couple of them, but he was like, oh, he tried to play the French. Let's play a little polka, and everyone's like, dude, your jokes are not funny. And he's like, deep down, I know I'm funny. I don't remember
Wow.
his name, but yeah, he was kind of a jerk in
You
that
just
movie.
keep making it almost more intolerable. Okay, my movie recommendation, since we're going to be talking about Operation Desert Storm and the Gulf War, is Jarhead. Did you ever see that movie?
Dude, that was my recommendation. But
Sucker.
I have a backup. I have a backup.
That's good. You better have
Yes,
a backup.
I have seen Jarhead. I have seen
Yeah.
Jarhead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty good. I think if you watch it, it's good. Well, here's the thing: is that there are just not a lot of movies out there on the Gulf War. Just not a
No,
lot of
I think
movies.
I only know of two of them, and
Yeah.
the other one is my backup.
Okay. Jake Gyllenhaal is in it. Jamie Foxx is in it. It is done well. There are
Mm.
some very memorable scenes in it, especially the scene where they're going to brand him, or that he thinks that they're going to brand him, and then that was a very memorable scene. Obviously, going into Kuwait with all the fires everywhere, that's a very memorable scene. But that was just very memorable when you saw it, growing up, um,
Hmm.
back in the 90s. And then there's another scene where, and it's very powerful, it'll probably bring tears to your eyes, is when a Vietnam veteran gets on the bus with them. If you've not seen the movie and you don't really care about seeing the movie, I would encourage you to watch that scene. Um, Boy, what a polar opposite moment, uh, in comparison to those guys and the guys who came home from Vietnam. The reception that they received. So yeah,
I don't remember
definitely.
that. I don't remember that scene.
Yeah, it was probably too powerful for you, and you said, "I'm gonna go." You know what? I don't. I want to insult you right now. I did a half insult. I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'll let you take on your book and movie recommendation.
All right. Well, since you stole my thunder and took that one,
You're
I
welcome.
guess I can use the other movie, which it's kind of good, but not that good. It's not as good as Jarhead. It's called Three Kings. It's
Oh yeah,
got
I remember seeing that.
it's got Mark Wahlberg and George Clooney and one of the
Ice
Ices.
Cube,
Is it Ice Cube?
Ice
It's
Cube.
either Ice Cube, Ice Tea, Vanilla Ice, one of those three. But yeah, I guess Ice Cube, the guy who got whacked at the end of Boys of the Hood.
Yeah.
Only they didn't show him getting whacked
No, they didn't show him getting whacked. So how do you know he got whacked?
because it showed him disappear. and it said that he was whacked like 2 weeks later.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
Boy, you got
but
that movie memorized.
yeah, it was a good movie. I like Boys in the
It
Hood.
was a really good movie.
Good movie, yeah. But it reminded me a little too much of Kelly's Heroes. It was like the Gulf War version of Kelly's Heroes, trying to get gold and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a little preachy in some areas. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's George Clooney, so.
Yeah. The book will be A Peace to End All Peace by David Fromkin. And it talks about what happened at the end of World War I with the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what took place is the British and the French were scrambling to get as much territory as possible and all the stuff that went on. And there was some commentary I remember reading about, I don't know if they were saying that he should have been there or he did speak, but they were talking about that David Fromkin should have been in the White House in 2002 to explain why it was a bad idea to go into Iraq for the Gulf War II.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right.
So that, which is going to kind of lead into what our discussion is, because this weekend, while we're doing this presentation, is the 30th anniversary of the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
I remember January the 16th was the deadline, and January the 17th in Saudi Arabia, it just started bombing. They started. I remember I was driving down the Beltway, going to work, and it was actually going to a meeting in the evening time when they came on the radio and said that that there are reports of explosions and fires and firing and whatnot over the skies of Baghdad. And I remember thinking the first thing out of my mind was, "Oh crap! I better go fill my car up with gas." And sure enough, gas prices went up the very next day.
You're a smart man. You've always been very smart.
I just wasn't sure if they were actually going to do anything because they kept saying, you know, here's the deadline, here's the deadline, here's the deadline. And it didn't last long.
Yeah.
But yeah, 30 years ago, the Gulf War began, the first Gulf War began. And we're going to have a discussion. We're going to call it the what if. What if we did not go into the Gulf War? What if we did not fight the Gulf War? What if we just left things alone? Iraq would have kept Kuwait, but what would have happened after that? Because the events that took place after that, if we didn't go, the world would look very different.
Yeah.
Going to the airport today would be very different. Now, before we continue this, so in case anyone is going to say anything, what we're going to have a discussion on, if we bring up a subject such as what events took place, we're not blaming the United States. We're not justifying any actions that were taken. What we're saying is that this is what the other side, this is what our enemies have been using as justification for attacks on American interests and our allies. So we just want to state that from the very beginning. We're not sitting here saying that we are to blame. We're just saying that this is what they're saying. Had we not gone in, had we not done certain things, they would not have attacked us. So this is a strictly what if we did not go in. So,
and you know, because it's one of those moments in military history that was done so well, so quickly and cleanly. I remember General Schwarzkopf. I remember my dad bought the VHS of General Schwarzkopf, more or less giving the rundown of how they accomplished the mission, how they accomplished Operation Desert Storm, and all that. And I remember seeing that as a kid. I don't really remember watching the video, but I do remember seeing General Schwarzkopf on the on the front of the VHS cover. So I always had his face emblazoned in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a guy who sort of stepped away from the scene, afterwards. But as for clean as clean as it was, as clean as the mission was, um, you know, the after effects or the aftermath of it was, it really is that you take one path, this is going to happen. You take the other path, this is going to happen. And you're sort of stuck in a position where either decision you make is the right one, and it's also the wrong one.
Right.
That's a tough position to be in. Do you? I don't really want to get into. Do you think it was the right decision? Let's talk about, as you said, if we hadn't done it, what would have happened? What would have happened? Saddam Hussein, you said, would have taken Kuwait, expanded his I don't want to say empire, but expanded his grasp on the region, and then what?
Okay. Well, this is going to be kind of a Back to the Future moment where, they're like things are going to change. The future changes, the past changes, but that's how we're going to have this discussion. Now, let's say we're going to do a what if. Okay, so Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait, August 2nd, 1990. He takes it, no problem. Okay. George H.W. Bush immediately tells Iraq that they need to withdraw. And he launches what's known as Operation Desert Shield. And he sends about 500,000 of our boys into Saudi Arabia. I want to say it was about 500,000.
Okay.
But it was a very interesting coalition because we also had Arab countries that got involved. In addition to Saudi Arabia, and I think it was, I want to say Bahrain, or United Arab Emirates, Qatar. But I do know for sure that Syria joined the Allied coalition. Syria has never been our ally, but they deployed soldiers in that battle itself. So I'm looking. I do Saudi Arabia, Egypt was in the fight. Like I said, Syria was in the fight, and but it was just an amazing coalition of countries. France, Great Britain was in it, and but let's say they did not get it. Let's say we did not get involved. Let's say we just left it alone. Okay, now based on some of the stories that I've read, and now what I'm about to tell you, these are not confirmations. I have heard that that Saddam Hussein planned on continuing on into Saudi Arabia, that he was going to invade Saudi Arabia. I had read from numerous sources, although again, nothing was confirmed, that King Hussein of Jordan also wanted to invade Saudi Arabia. Now, before we get into the what ifs, let's go back about 70, 80 years. Did you see the movie?
Prior to
the Gulf
Operation
War.
Desert, yeah.
Yes. Prior to 1991's battle. Did you seen the movie Lawrence of Arabia? Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Now you remember you had King Faisal, and they were fighting the Ottoman Empire.
Played by
Alec Guinness. Sir Alec Guinness.
There you go.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay.
He will make his appearance.
That's right. Now, that family, those were the Hashemite family. That family consisted of several other brothers. You had Abdullah, you had Ali. Faisal was really like the head of the coalition. I mean, their father still ruled. He was like the emir or the king of what was then known as the Hejaz, Hejaz. The Hejaz was the western part of Arabia. Now, there was no Saudi Arabia at that time. It was just Arabia.
Right.
So the now that was the part that went under rebel. It went into rebellion in 1916 to get rid of the Turks. The British joined forces with them. This is where Lawrence shows up,
Mm-hmm.
and they, when you see the movie, you see that they successfully kicked the Turks out of Arabia and out
Right.
and out of Syria. So
Mm-hmm.
what happened was this: that the Hashemite family were given promises by the British and the French.
Right.
You had the Sykes-Picot Agreement, but the British agreed that, okay, we will let y'all be the kings, but it'll be under British protection.
Mm-hmm.
So now Faisal took Syria, and his brother Abdullah took what became known as Transjordan. Now that is what we have today as Jordan, but it was everything that was to the east of the Jordan River. So you had Faisal has Syria, and you have Abdullah who has Transjordan. It was called Transjordan at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now the French were like, nope, we want Syria. So they fought Faisal, kicked him out. The British then decided to give Faisal Iraq. They just created the state of Iraq. So now Faisal runs Iraq and Abdullah runs Transjordan. Now, Abdullah was the grandfather of King Hussein of Jordan. Now, King Hussein has passed, and now his son Abdullah runs Jordan. But everybody still remembers who King Hussein of Jordan was. Well, he was the grandson of Abdullah of Transjordan.
Mm-hmm.
So that movie, Lawrence of Arabia, was about King Hussein's family. It was about his grandfather. It was about his great uncle, about his great grandfather. So the Hashemites had they pretty much were the protectors of what were known as the two holy places, Mecca and Medina.
Right.
Well, after World War I was over, Ali was pretty much he was left in the Hejaz to protect that area because, again, Faisal was in Iraq, Abdullah was in Transjordan, so the brother Ali was down in the Hejaz. Well, the House of Saud, which is where the word Saudi Arabia comes in, they
Mm-hmm.
fought a war with the Hashemites to control the Hejaz region.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until about 1925 when the Sauds were finally successful, and they kicked the Hashemite family out of Mecca, Medina, Jeddah, the whole Hejaz area.
Mm-hmm.
And the House of Saud annexed the Hejaz, made one big country, and called it Saudi Arabia. So that's where the term Saudi Arabia comes in. So now you move up to 1991. So Saddam Hussein, no relations to King Hussein,
Right.
because he had a cousin named Faisal II, who was like the grandson of King Faisal. Faisal II was assassinated in 1958 by some radicals in Iraq, and that's when the Republic of Iraq really began. Now, this was all during the time when you had the Egyptian president. His name was Gamal Abdel Nasser. Nasser wanted. He was a big pan-Arab kind of guy. He was kind of anti-West, and he wanted to see all the Arab countries unite. But very briefly, Egypt and Syria became one country, is known as the United Arab Republic. And there were talks of Iraq also becoming part of that republic. That's why the Syrian flag has 2 stars, and the Iraqi flag has 3 stars. So that'll kind of give you an idea where that flag came from. But yeah, Nasser wanted one big Arab coalition. He considered King Hussein his enemy, but King Hussein of Jordan decided to ally himself with Nasser in their fight against Israel. But he paid a big price in '67 when Israel beat Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Egypt in the 6-Day War.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now move on to 1991. So here's the what if. We did not get involved in Kuwait. We left Saddam Hussein to take it, and we didn't interfere. King Hussein had his reasons. King Hussein of Jordan had his reasons for helping Saddam Hussein in the invasion of Iraq. So King Hussein very likely would have taken Western Iraq. I'm sorry, King
Kuwait.
Hussein of Jordan would have taken the western part of Arabia, and Saddam Hussein would have taken the eastern part of Saudi Arabia. Okay, think of the ramifications of what would have happened. Okay, first of all, wouldn't have been our problem. Yes, people would be like, oh, but the oil. Well, okay, regardless of who took over, they're still going to sell the oil.
Right.
Okay, so we would have still had oil. It's just that we'd have had a different owner. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the House of Saud and the Wahhabis joined forces. I want to say it was around 1744. They joined forces and they helped each other grow. So Saudi Arabia really was behind the big Wahhabist movement. Now, the Wahhabists, those are the really radical cover up. Women can't drive. Women have no rights.
Right.
Well, after the Gulf War,
I at times like that, I so want to say something like sarcastic, but I have to refrain. No, I couldn't come up with anything worth saying and would be acceptable to humankind.
Okay, well, that's fine. But okay, now, had we not gone in, there's a good possibility you would have seen the destruction of the Wahhabist movement, or they would have been kicked out of Saudi Arabia, and the Wahhabist movement would have to either go underground or go elsewhere to another country. Because King Hussein of Jordan, he was not a fundamentalist. He was actually a pretty level-headed guy. Saddam Hussein, now, granted, he was an insane tyrant, but you know what? He was a secular, insane tyrant. He did things for himself and for his family, but he certainly was not a radical in any way. But we may have seen the end of the Wahhabist movement. Now, the Wahhabists have planted mosques and schools all over the United States, all over the world since the Gulf War. So we have seen an increase of a lot of mosques, but I want to say Wahhabist mosque. I don't want to just throw in mosques altogether. I'm not going to sit. Listen, I've got friends who are Muslim. There's one guy. He's as patriotic as we are. He loves his country.
Likewise.
So yeah. So I love Muslims like that. So I don't want to lump in all the Muslims. What I am concerned about are the Wahhabist Muslims.
Correct. Yeah.
Because that's like saying a red-blooded American who's against the Constitution. He is our enemy just as much as a fundamentalist Wahhabist is to this country. So now, what else would we have seen that would have been different? People like bin Laden used when we got involved in the Iraq War of 91. We not only did we severely damage the country of Iraq, a lot of Iraqis were killed, but we also left soldiers behind in Saudi Arabia. Now, to many of these fundamentalists like bin Laden and some of the other fundamentalists out there, it was an insult to have foreign troops that were not Muslim stationed in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, stationed, not left behind like on accident. Stationed.
No. These are stationed. We had men stationed, American soldiers stationed in Saudi Arabia. They looked at that as an insult, as an affront to their religion, and they used that as an excuse for the first World Trade Center attack. And I want to say that was in 93 or 94.
It was definitely early 90s.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure which one. I think it was in 93. Yeah, it was in 93. And then you had the second, the Great World Trade Center attack of September 11, 2001. You had the coal USS Cole in South Yemen attacked. You had the Khobar Towers. You had, I think it was the Marine Barracks. Those were two different attacks in Saudi Arabia. You had the twin attacks in Tanzania and Nairobi. And I think that was in 98, the embassies. So you had attack after attack after attack. And the 2001 attacks were so successful for our enemies that it led to the war on terror. It led to the Iraq War of 2003. It led to the Patriot Act. Go to the airport. How long is security? Take off your shoes. So what if we did not help out Kuwait and possibly Saudi Arabia? I mean, what's your assessment? Do you think, are we onto something? Do you think that, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think, because I don't want to get to the point where like, oh, we shouldn't have gone in, because it's, hindsight's always 2020. But correct. I think if it were to have been Hussein, and that it would have been Jordan and Iraq taking over Saudi Arabia, it would have been fewer countries in the region, right? It would have been split. It would have been more unified, even though it would have been two, and then those two would have been more or less with, I would assume, an understanding of, okay, we did this together. There's somewhat of a unification here. And so there's a bit of an understanding, instead of, as I think is always sort of the phrase that is thrown around, is stirring up the hornet's nest. The Middle East, whenever America continues to get involved in the Middle East, whether it was in the 90s or the 2000s, it's really is stirring up the hornet's nest. Even when you get involved, here as late as a few years back of getting involved in Syria, and that whole thing with, it's just like, it's under the guise of we're doing something good, but it's like, well, the ramifications of doing it may end up being worse than what is being sold to the people. Like, I remember growing up as a kid, always seeing Saddam Hussein's face on magazines, especially like Time magazine. My parents had a subscription to Time magazine. And I remember two in particular, two covers of Time magazine as a kid. And one, it was like a picture of Adolf Hitler, I think Stalin, and then Saddam Hussein, right, on the cover. And then, which is obvious, like extreme propaganda. And then you also had a picture of Saddam Hussein on there with a bullseye mark, sort of like a scope mark on his face, right? And, I think it probably would have been to just go ahead and get into it, a better idea to have sort of not gotten involved. It's one of those things where I say this all the time, so I can't be like completely hypocritical. I say it all the time. Like, George Washington's farewell address after his second term was always, don't get involved in foreign affairs and foreign wars. And dude, since the turn of the 20th century, we've just made a killing, literally, of doing that. I think to an extent, if it would have been left alone, and even though Saddam Hussein was a terrible person, I think to an extent, I think that's sort of what you were going for, is it would have sort of stabilized the region, and left it up to two primary powers. So yeah, I mean, and then you wouldn't have had, I think to an extent, you're going to have the resentment to the West regardless, going all the way back to World War I. And that's just an obvious thing. There was going to be resentment against the West regardless of what took place. Specifically against the U.S., maybe not as much as what it is now. But yeah, I think. What do you? I mean, is that sort of? That's how I view it.
Well, there is an Arab saying where if two brothers are fighting
Mm-hmm.
and an outsider, cousin comes and intercedes on behalf of one of the brothers, the two brothers will unite and fight the cousin.
Correct.
So I think we have seen that.
Yeah.
There is, if I had been in the White House and I advised Jim Baker and George H.W. Bush, I would have told them, leave it alone. Just don't get involved because it was great. Yeah, I remember when we won the war, how
Mm-hmm.
great it was. America we had all these new smart weapons technologies. I mean, you remember the video of that missile going right into the front door of that building, and you could
Mm-hmm.
see it getting closer and closer, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you see snow. Well, okay, yeah. I mean, that was like really,
Or
really,
sand.
or sand. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. But
it,
no,
it looked
it's true.
cool, right? And I remember at the
And it's
time, I was
so
like going,
easy.
kick ass.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's so easy to get caught up in that. Because I remember in the war in Iraq when we started invading Iraq, you know, I remember me and a friend of mine. He was like, "Dude, did you see George W. Bush? He like gave Saddam Hussein the ultimatum, to leave his own country.
Yeah,
You've got 24 hours, I think." And I was like, "Dang,"
yeah,
And we're college students. And then I remember listening on the radio of just like the attack going on in Baghdad, and I'm like, man, this is I wish I was there to cover that. But sort of stepping back, it's just like, you go in, you do all of this, and then what? It's just,
well,
and it comes down to I think this is what it comes down to as well, because I know we've got a lot of young listeners. Idealism is a dangerous thing. And idealism continues to be sold to the American people that, look, we're going to get in there, we're going to institute, our type of government, and everybody's going to be happy over there. We're going to, institute democracy. They're living under this, regime of whatever. I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's, maybe that's what they want. Maybe that's what they're used to. I don't know, but when did it become our prerogative to start setting up democracies everywhere?
yeah.
It's just, to me, it's sold to, a lot of people as we're doing the right thing when in fact, no, you're not. You're not. You're creating a war that doesn't even involve you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be like, well, the oil prices are going to go up. Okay. Whatever. I mean, if that's your reason for going to war, then you've lost all understanding of why people go to war in the first place. I mean, I get like back in the day, like, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, you went to war to conquer a land and then own it. You didn't go, to war to just get out, right? I mean, there were, okay, we may not be staying, but you're going to give us tribute.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's what irritates me so much about the past number of wars that America has been involved in, is seemingly no way out of it. Like, you're just getting into this war and you don't really have an exact plan. I mean, this was put together. You had the Pentagon Papers of the Vietnam War, and then you had the Afghanistan Papers that were released, last year by the Washington Post, or the Atlantic, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just sort of aimless, and it's so dangerous.
Well, I mean, I remember hearing Donald Rumsfeld say that when we go into Iraq, we're going to be viewed as liberators. Well, yeah, the Kurds. The Kurds viewed us as liberators, and if one good thing came out of those wars, it was that we did help out the Kurds after the Second Gulf War, and now the Kurds are now pretty much in charge of their own destiny. But whatever happened after the initial battles, and we captured the country, and then I remember Paul Wolfowitz was trying to set up a new Iraqi government by January 30th, I think, of the following year, which would have been in 2004. But before that happened, the country was in absolute chaos.
Yeah.
Because you had the Shiites, most of whom it seemed just they hated America just as much as they hated Saddam Hussein. So here we literally we gave the Shiites their freedom, and they turned against us. And so you had the Shiites were against us. You had the Sunnis that were against us because we went and we interfered and just totally turned the country upside down. Mm-hmm. And the only people that were happy with our presence was the Kurds up in the north. So, I mean, any American that was caught by a Sunni got his head cut off. I mean, this was when the Al Qaeda in Iraq suddenly rose up. You had that sadist, and I can't remember his name right now, who would just cut off the heads of Americans while they were still alive. But the thing that concerned me is that, you know, there was just attack after attack on this country. There was the 9/11 battles. You know, okay, we took out Saddam Hussein. We removed him from power. We went into Afghanistan. Afghanistan, is it in better shape now than it was, say, in 2001? Is Iraq in better shape? And then we went and we took out Muammar Gaddafi out of Libya, and look what happened to Libya after that. Yeah, we took out a tyrant, and what became of Libya after that? You know, we had
just because you're powerful doesn't mean you know what you're doing.
Right. I mean, we had those guys killed in Benghazi on September 11th of I think it was in 2012. September 11th, 2012. That movie, 13 Hours. Right. Very good movie, very good book.
Yeah.
So there are consequences for, yes, okay, you can defeat the enemy, but then what? You know, when Douglas MacArthur went into Japan, he had a plan, and his plan was, you know, he was going, you know, they went in there. We're gonna rule Japan for a couple of years. We're gonna give them a constitution. We're gonna get rid of the militarism that Japan is known for. And they were successful. We were not harsh towards Japan. I mean, I think we learned from Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, when he conquered a land, he didn't sit there and rule the people harshly. I mean, yeah granted, he did, like the city of Tyre, he wiped out that country because they would not surrender.
But they would not surrender, yeah.
Would not surrender. But he learned that it's a good idea not to have an enemy to your back. So he welcomed them to his empire. That's what Alexander the Great did. That's what Douglas MacArthur did. MacArthur didn't go there and rule harshly. It was not a repeat of the Treaty of Versailles, where France is like, hey, you want peace? Okay, here's our terms for peace. It wasn't like that. Yeah. So Paul Wolfowitz handed a mess back to the Iraqis. And we've had soldiers. We've been in the war ever since.
Yeah. And that's the most irritating thing. And that's the big difference. When we first went in there, and like we referenced this at the beginning, it was done so well, so quickly. You had a plan in place. We're strictly in there to get the Iraqis out of Kuwait. Mm-hmm. And mission accomplished. Done. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if it was, man, that was so easy. We can do it again. I remember reading that George H.W. Bush actually said, you cannot go into Iraq, because if you do, you will never get out.
Mhm.
You're stuck there. And his own son did not heed that advice and sent, you know, based on whatever, WMDs, all 16 intelligence agencies said, yeah, they've got WMDs. They didn't. Or at least none were found. And then what? You're stuck. You're stuck in there. And then you're in Afghanistan. You're stuck in there. Longest war in American history?
Longest war in American
Right?
history. Yeah.
I mean, longest war in American history. And their military cannot even, it can't even compare at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, we're trying to set things up. And
yeah,
it's just like
this, this what, November or December will be 20 years we've been in in Afghanistan.
It's like what you're doing is you're not defeating an enemy. You're trying to change a culture, a millennia plus years culture. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. You can't do it. You can't do it in 20 years. You probably can't even do it in 100 years. So I think it's hubris. I think that'd probably be the easiest way to define it. Yeah. Hubris has definitely wielded its power through our government for the past 50 years.
Yeah.
Maybe more, 60, going into the Vietnam War. So I don't know. Look, and it's in the excuses that are given. Well, we got to stop communism. Okay, noble cause. We got to stop a tyrant. Okay, noble cause. He's, killing people. He's, butchering, whatever. Noble cause. They attacked us on 9/11. Noble cause. Mm-hmm. But have a plan in place. And that plan should not be, okay, be like us. You did a wrong. We're going to settle that score. And then that's it.
Right. But a lot of times, when you settle a score, it creates more problems in the future. Perfect example was in Tombstone when the Earps and Doc Holliday fought the Clantons and the McClarys. Okay, well, you had one Clanton and two McClarys die in that battle. Mm-hmm. Okay, the Earps, two of them were wounded. They walked away. They were still alive. They lived to fight another day, but it wasn't over. And a couple months later, Virgil gets his arm shot off, and a few months after that, Morgan gets murdered. Yeah, and they still went after them when they were trying to leave Tombstone when they were in Tucson. And it
is vengeance.
Right.
Yeah. Hatfields and McCoys.
Right. So, okay, we go in there. One of the things you have to realize when you fight a war is you have to annihilate your enemy. You have to annihilate them. Because if you just beat them, they're going to come back. Germany, 20 years after the Treaty of Versailles was signed, 20 years later, Germany came back. Yeah. 20 years later, Germany came back and they invaded Poland. Yeah. Germany wasn't annihilated in 1918. Mm-mm. They were beaten, but they were not.
For our listeners, like if you really do want to understand how the modern world became the modern world, you got to study the results of World War I. Don't go to World War II. You have to study the results of World War I. Yeah. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. I mean, we annihilated Japan. We just completely annihilated Japan. There was nothing left. I mean, granted, had we invaded, we would have had to fight women and children.
Look, but it would have been much worse if we had invaded, if we hadn't dropped those bombs.
Right. But they were beaten. They were thoroughly beaten. And then we went in there, we took over the country, but we treated them very nice. And here was the smart part. MacArthur and Truman kept the emperor in power.
Yeah.
Now Uh, when we took over Iraq in 2003, there was that de-Baathification. Anybody, if you were a Baathist, you were out. Well, if you were a Baathist and you're like a school teacher, you're now out of a job. If you were a military guy, you're out of a job. So what they did was that Paul Wolfowitz really created a huge mess,
Mm-hmm.
and it led to a civil war that we got involved in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, Fallujah. How many men did we lose in Fallujah?
Yeah.
For what?
I mean, like,
I'm
I
gonna,
remember what, Fallujah, Kabul, places like that where it's just like wicked bad.
yeah, yeah. And how many of our guys came back scarred, physically and emotionally? You
Right.
you saw the movie that not Mark Wahlberg, the American Sniper, that guy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Chris
forgot
Kyle.
Chris Kyle. He comes back and he's messed up, completely messed up. That's that's what happened to a lot of our guys,
Yep.
emotionally
And
scarred.
just
And listen, I'm not one of those pacifists that believes
no.
that yeah, after 9/11, yes, it was, all out war, all
Right.
out war.
I don't think many
But
people had a problem with the war in Afghanistan at the forefront. I think a lot of people had a problem with the war in Iraq because I think a lot of people, well, the oil thing, became, just in the forefront, like, oh, this is about oil, whether it was or not. I still can't figure that one out. But to an extent, there was also, well, he's trying to one up his dad. So,
yeah,
but yeah, it's like, look, we're not pacifists. Um, look, I believe in the necessity of war at times. And I know a lot of people are like, oh my God. But it's just like, look, war is there for a reason. It is the last resort. And if you don't have that, then none of your other resolutions will work if you do not have that backstop. So,
well,
anyways, you got anything else, man?
no, I was just going to state that had Saddam Hussein and King Hussein invaded Arabia, then I think there's a possibility, maybe, that a lot of the attacks that came towards us would have just been attacks against Jordan and Iraq, but that would have been their war, not ours.
Yeah.
And maybe we would have seen the end of Wahhabism.
Yeah. But then again, it's hindsight's 2020.
Yep.
You never know. They could have, they could have created a massive army, could
Mm-hmm.
have created nuclear weapons,
Mm-hmm.
and become like a superpower,
Mm-hmm.
and then be thinking, oh dang, why didn't we stop it when we had the chance?
Right.
So you never know. We could have just kept them small and not a superpower of some
Right.
kind. With
Yeah.
all the oil, how could we not see that they've got all the oil? And now that they've unified, it's one of those things where you just you take that, you make your choice, and then you make
Mm-hmm.
your bed and you sleep in it. And sometimes you make your bed in hell, and you
Yeah.
just hope to God that He's there with you. But I think we pointed out all the possibilities of if we hadn't, here's what could have taken place. But
That's
you
kind
never
of
know,
like
man.
what would have happened if we just let Germany take Poland?
Right.
If Britain and France didn't declare war, very unlikely that they would have turned west. They would have
Yeah.
diverted all their attention east.
hmm And it's like, what would have happened if America hadn't gotten involved in World War One? Would England have fallen?
But
So,
if England didn't get involved after the German invasion of Belgium,
hmm
if they just said, "Hey, not our problem," they let France fight. Okay, France would have surrendered. All right.
right.
Well, they surrendered 40 years prior to that in the Franco-Prussian War, and it
Yeah.
didn't have a negative effect on Britain.
hmm
So there probably wouldn't have been World War One. Would have just been just a regional war.
Yeah. Wild stuff.
Well, yep, so many what
Yeah.
ifs. So many
All
what
right.
ifs.
So we have talked a lot about war. And so the scripture for this episode is Psalm 144:1, which says, "Praise be to the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle." What movie was that one used on?
I don't know.
Come on, dude. He was a sniper.
American
He
Sniper?
quoted scripture a lot when he was about to shoot.
I have no idea.
It's like your favorite war movie, one of your favorite war movies.
I have a lot of favorite war movies.
Who was the sniper that always quoted scripture?
The only one I remember was the guy from Saving Private Ryan.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, now we can move on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our show to an end. Alan, where can people find us?
I don't remember what scripture he stated.
Unbelievable.
All I remember him is saying is, "Lord, keep my hands, let me shoot straight," or whatever it is that he said.
Yeah.
But I don't think they had guns back then.
He was amazing.
He was pretty good. Okay, well, you can find us for now on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Yeah. Until they kick us off.
Well, see, we're not on Twitter anymore. We quit Twitter.
Right.
We quit Twitter.
I think Parler is trying to make a comeback.
They are trying to make a comeback.
I heard that they are back. Their website's up or something like that. So I don't know. Yeah. But the app is not working. So I don't know.
No, it's not. But we do have our own website, www.thesonsofhistory.com.
That's right.
We do stress, please, on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes.
I posted something just today on the Battle of Cowpens, which was
yes, you did.
Fought. It was the day of this recording, 240 years ago today, the Battle of Cowpens. So it is on YouTube. So if you visit the YouTube page, subscribe, and you can watch the video. It's about 9 minutes. 9-minute video.
There you go. Yep. All right. Wonderful. Well, my friend, it was good to see you. And also on our website, check out our merch store. Alan is wearing one of the shirts that we put together. You know the thing, but that one is now obsolete. You should have got it when you had the chance. But hopefully you still know the thing.
You can buy this one for $500.
There you go, and he'll even sign it with a Sharpie. Beautiful. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, that brings our show to a close. We hope that you've had a wonderful week, and we hope that you have a wonderful week this week. I don't know where I was going with that. We'll see you later.